Hello, welcome magical ones to what I'm calling the Wild Apothecary Pharmacy, which is a mini-series that I offered and you invited me to do, all around some of the remedies that we invoke in this path. And by the path, I mean the path of your wild apothecary. So what I mean by wild apothecary is really essentially a person who doses medicines. So this is the path for those magical women who have maybe suppressed their magic, denied their magic, and want to learn how to heal themselves and become magical healers, the magical healers they were born here to be as phosphoric witches, which I'll go into a little bit more. Like, that's who you were born here to be for the world. So typically the women in my path will have this deep call, this burning fire, if you like, this passion for magic and for medicine and for healing. So that is who this is for. And yeah, the path of the wild apothecary and the pharmacy essentially is those remedies that you will begin to learn to dose if you walk the path. And it was interesting because I looked up the word pharmacy, funnily enough, before I called it this, and was really surprised to find that the original kind of Latin meaning of pharmacy was to charm and enchant and like magic, cure, potions and medicines. So for me, this is like completely magical because essentially this is I'd also talked about this path being for those people who are disenchanted healers. This is about enchantment, about bringing magic back to medicine, back to healing. So, and that can be whether you are a woman who has already trained in all the healing modalities. Often my women will have trained in many healing modalities and kind of become disenchanted with them as if they didn't work. And that is where I kind of then lead women into the healing that they need in order to become unapologetically magical again. But they may also have not yet explored any modalities for themselves in terms of training. So this path is really that of also guiding magical ones who are just kind of drawn to magic. They've got that burning desire but have never allowed themselves to really explore that, to go deeper with it. So it's for those that are purely magical but suppressing it and haven't trained, and it's also for those who have trained, who are already healers. So just to speak to that before we begin, I'm essentially going to be dosing and sharing some of the remedies that we begin to work more deeply with, more intimately with, as a healing thing in this path. And this is especially those, the ones that I'm starting with, especially those that are dosed and going to be dosed in the path of Invoke Your Wild Apothecary, which is the crucible, the very kind of introductory level crucible that we have coming up just after Samhain, after Halloween, where the kind of veil is really thin between the two worlds. So we'll be exploring that kind of the remedies that we're going to be dosing in that path as we go into this more today. But essentially, my women are called phosphoric healers, and I may refer to them as phosphoric secret witches as well, because essentially the phosphoric woman was born here as a magical one. She was open-hearted, she was sensitive, and over the time, as she's been kind of living in this mundane culture, she's experienced wounding, she's experienced trauma, often with a lowercase t, but maybe also with an uppercase T, like bigger traumas that have had her really essentially shut down her magic. She'd come here, when we talk about in this path, the Wild Apothecary, we talk about like yours like. It has a homeopathic lineage, and I don't dose homeopathically in terms of how homeopathically would be traditionally dosed. I'm not kind of dosing out medicines. What I'm doing is dosing medicines energetically through the crucibles that I work with, and that's important to know, because I'll also go into this a little bit more about the phosphoric secret witch, but it's important to know there's kind of a disclaimer that I want to bring to this mini series, in that if you aren't here and open and ready to consciously choose into working with these remedies, then don't listen to the rest of this video. when people come to homeopaths, and this is why I'm offering this disclaimer, when people traditionally come and work with homeopaths with medicines, like in the physical, they're coming with having consented to kind of taking that medicine. And that is really, really important. It's why we call all of our crucibles invoke, because the invocation of magic is actually really critical to this process kind of being magical and working and having that healing effect. We have to consciously choose into invoking these remedies. And this is why I make this a disclaimer, because the way that I dose is by bringing the remedy alive and energetically dosing that medicine. So it's not about taking a pill, it's about really sinking into the deeper energetic that I'm offering as I bring the remedy to life, and seeing more and more about what the gold is to be reclaimed, where the healing is, where the alchemy is for you. So I'm going to invite you into that when I journey with the remedies, but I just wanted to offer that as a disclaimer, because if you are not here wanting to be dosed with a remedy, just know that that is what's going to happen in the next part of the share. So if that's not something you want to consciously choose into, then stop watching. So, but yeah, back to the Phosphoric Secret Witch. She comes here as that sensitive, open-hearted, magical one, and then kind of learns through these different traumas, these different wounds, that her magic isn't safe, her sensitivity isn't safe, and she learns to shame who she was born here to be. She was born with this phosphoric constitution, which means she was a magical one. And she then kind of experiences these different layers, which is the remedies that we then go on to dose. There's these kind of collective layers, these remedy patterns that I've noticed that phosphoric women experience, and they come here to live out those. There's a purpose for that. Her soul came here to live out these different wounded trauma states, so that she could then go on to be medicine for those who are also living those trauma states. And ultimately, she's learned as a magical one, whether she's trained or not, that her magic isn't safe, and that she needs to keep herself safe from being magical. So she kind of shuts down her magic. She will, if she's a healer, she'll become a disenchanted healer, often kind of apologising for the medicine that she doses instead of really proudly, unapologetically owning it. If she's someone who has just begun to explore magic and hasn't trained, she's not a healer yet, then she will likely kind of push magic to one side and be very much in the thick of the mundane. And the disenchanted healers may also be there as well. There's the kind of, everything takes importance over your medicine, over your magic. So that's who the secret witch is, that's who the phosphoric witch is. And now I'm going to go into the first remedy. And as I mentioned, if you are not yet open and kind of choosing into consciously kind of embodying and working with these remedies in a healing way, then just know that you have permission to stop and even feel into, like, is this aligned for me to continue to watch? But essentially I'm going to bring one of the first remedies to life. Often when women work with the remedies, they can have some kind of healing response. This is how homeopathy works. It's meant to be gentle, rapid and permanent cures, but also and on occasion that potency that has been dosed, and I'm going to keep the potency quite low in this, is or can be too much and can bring up things that feel maybe triggering or painful to look at. So I just want to presence that is a completely normal and welcome part of this process, and it's why it's important to choose it consciously. So the first remedy, and also just to add, the reason we talk about the witch being phosphoric is that we in homeopathy and the remedies of the wild, this kind of wild apothecary path, we talk about the basis, the foundational principles are that the remedies of the wild dosed in this path cure on a like cures like basis. So the phosphoric women, typically phosphorus is what's on the end of a match, so they will typically kind of explode into this kind of, that when like a lit match, it's like be this real big flame, and that can look like them being like really shining a light for women in the world and being their unique remedy and serving women, like holding the torch up and saying, follow me, this is the way. But it can also look like them exploding in emotions that haven't been processed, and it can also look like them kind of burning themselves down to the ground. So That is, if you're phosphoric, you probably resonate with that. And it's the same for all the remedies. So each of the remedy will have like a shadow expression, a fear-based expression, a trauma expression, and each of the remedies will also have a goal. So that's how I'm going to dose that to you, so that you can begin to get a feel for how this works. So the first remedy that is often seen, I call them the collective traumas of the secret witch, the phosphoric witch. It's kind of like, imagine your core is phosphoric and then you have layers over the top that are preventing you from being your magic. So one of the layers that we dose is Aurum Metallicum. Aurum is a metal in its kind of beautiful expression. It's shiny, it's radiant, it's like, yeah, it's beautiful, beautiful gift. And yet, when a woman goes into an Aurum Metallicum expression of fear, this is a remedy that is deeply, darkly depressed and sad. This remedy feels like the deep, deep shame and like absolute guilt of being a failure. Its theme is failure and duty. And I knew that this was the remedy to start with, because yesterday, and this is often what happens for me, I will often kind of prove the remedies that I'm here to teach, and I could really feel this kind of energetic of failure. I had a dream about being back at school, and like everybody else had seemed to have like created all of this magical stuff, and in my mind, like I felt this deep, heavy kind of energetic just sitting on my chest of like failure. And that was the sense when I was a disenchanted healer that I had about my own business. This can be one of the ways that this expresses for secret witches, if they are healers. There can be this deep sense of like never being able to fully birth your magical business into the world, never fully being who you came here to be, like never being that magical, unapologetic expression. There's like a deep feeling of heaviness, of failure. And this can show up in other ways for magical women who aren't healers yet. This can show up in ways that there's just a deep sense of failing at everything you do, whether you're a mum who's just feeling like there's everything on top of her and she can't hold it all, that sense of like deep feeling of being a failure. That is like the heaviness. Aurum is a heavy metal. It's like just a deep heaviness, a burden that sits on your chest of like failure and over responsibility. They have this deep sense of duty, Aurum, and they will kind of feel this over responsibility for meeting everybody else's needs, which again suppresses their allowing of themselves to be magical. It suppresses their allowing of themselves to grant the time for themselves to be in magical practice. And it's a woman who really is kind of like in demands past her capabilities. As often again with the secret witch and the phosphoric witch, this deep kind of burnout and sense of burden, and like she will just keep going and keep going and keep going with this deep sense of duty that leaves her hustling, leaves her taking lots and lots of action, but rarely kind of allowing herself to be in magic, in what nourishes her soul. And there's often this kind of sense of despair, this sense of shame, this sense of guilt. And of course, being a phosphoric witch, she is a woman also who's likely deeply sensitive, and Aurum also have this deep sensitivity about them if they're in this trauma state. They will also be very, very moved. One of the key features of Aurum is they'll be very, very moved by music. And they may well listen to music over and over again on repeat and feel some kind of catharticness about that. And yeah, as I said, they can get quite depressed if they are not being who they were born here in the world to be, i.e. they are not being fully phosphorus, they're not being their unique remedy in the world, they're not here being healers for themselves, they're not here being healers maybe for others. That's when they can get into this state. And this kind of, also they've got this heavy feeling of like fear of getting things wrong. They will be very concerned, being a metal, there's that kind of perfectionist streak. They'll be very concerned about getting things right. And they'll also all have a deep connection, a deep desire for connection. So if they're not in connection with themselves, if they're not in connection with others who are like-minded, they can feel quite heartbroken. So again, this is very much the Aurum state, and as I mentioned, this is a place where I have been, like, I have felt this deep sense of failure, both in life, in terms of trying to juggle, keep everything going for everybody else, and even I think back to when I was in my old job as a brand manager over a decade ago. That was very much where I was, and I kept going because the fear was that I would be a failure. And this pushes a secret witch, a phosphoric witch especially, because she's so deeply sensitive, into burnout. And yet, that is really, really powerful to see. If that is a state that you are in, it's really helpful to begin to illuminate that that is a state of trauma. That is a state that has been learned at some point in the past, that you've been creating from innocently, and that can really be loved in order to bring you into the gold expression of Aurum. And gold expression of Aurum is an absolutely devoted magical one. They are devoted to bringing their medicine to the world. They are devoted to living from soul, even though there is all this potential fear around doing so. They are devoted to becoming their unique remedy in the world. They are naturally gifted. Metals are naturally gifted. When they allow themselves to be in the truth of who they are, in their true expression, they are naturally going to be medicine for people. They don't have to try. They're just naturally gifted in their truth. And they also have this deep sensitivity, as I mentioned, but that sensitivity is a magical medicine. Like, there are so many people who are sensitive, who need that understanding that Aurum has of sensitivity. This remedy is also incredibly powerful because of their capacity to take aligned action. When they take action in alignment with their soul, they are nourished, and they have this great capacity to actually do a lot. They create a lot. They're powerful in what they create. And so, again, they are able to take aligned action in bringing their remedy to the world, in healing themselves, if that is where they're at. They are able, very capable to do all of that. And they're also honest. They're really open. Again, it goes very well with phosphorus. You can see why phosphorus goes into this state, because there's that deep sensitivity and openness that is also seen in phosphorus. And yeah, they're just beautifully open and honest when they're not in fear, which again is medicine in this world where so much of ourselves are shut down. And they're also deeply loving. They're deeply, deeply loving, and that comes from that kind of connection piece. So there is a deep capacity in Aurum as she alchemizes and learns to heal and alchemize all the wounds, to be able to become her remedy in the world. She'll discover her unique remedy. And yeah, she has this deep capacity to be who she came here to be, if she can alchemize all of that. So those themes, essentially Aurum's main themes, are the sense of duty that can become a burden, and this sense of failure that wants some love. So these are the themes that we will be diving even more deeply to in Invoke Your Wild Apothecary. But for now, I'm going to just give you a little bit of guidance as to how to work with these remedies in the meantime, because there are a few ways that we can begin to consciously reclaim what is being seen here, what's being felt here in that energetic of Aurum Metallicum. And the way that I'm going to invite you to begin is to just be with some inquiry. The first inquiry is essentially, where are you resonating with Aurum? Where is there some resonance? Because again, we talk about resonance being what's healing. Like when we have something illuminated, when we can really feel a connection to something like yours like. So if we're feeling in that shadow state of Aurum, the first way of beginning to heal is to begin to allow ourselves to feel that resonance, feel the truth of where we are in that state. Allow ourselves to be with that, allow what comes up to be seen and loved. And Yeah, that's the first inquiry. So it's just with absolute love, where do you resonate with Aurum Metallicum? And Aurum Metallicum can be that kind of heavy feeling remedy. So if anything is surfacing for you, please, please share, bring it to the group, and I will love you in it. And then the second inquiry is, are you feeling called to go a little bit deeper? And if you are, then of course, this is something that is possibly a sign that one of the remedies that we're bringing alive, that we're dosing even more deeply in the Crucible of Invoke Your Wild Apothecary, it's probably a sign that that is for you. So I'm going to drop a link into the comments so that you can have a little read of that. And it's definitely worth considering, again, consciously choosing for yourself, are you wanting to work a little bit deeper with these remedies so that you can become the Phosphoric Witch in her full expression, her full healthy, beautiful, magical expression, because ultimately that is who she is. The Phosphoric woman is a woman who has learned to heal herself. She's become her own healer instead of relying on the typical mundane fixes that are out there, these kind of suppressive things like being on the pill, going to doctors, like kind of scrolling on social media. All of these things are ways that my women typically suppress their magic. So I'm going to leave it there. We begin Invoke Your Wild Apothecary in November, the first week in November, and yeah, I'm so excited to birth this into the world as we really do bring this Wild Apothecary path alive for all of you magical ones. Anyway, I'm going to leave it there. All the love, and let me know what comes up for you as you work with Aurum Metallicum.